Hello everyone, welcome back to another Magic video. I am Void and I'm here to talk to you about censorship in Magic the Gathering. I'm going to give you guys my favorite censored Magic the Gathering cards. It's going to be kind of arbitrary, not completely. I do have a method of which I'm ranking these. It's going to be by the original artwork. So if it takes the original artwork and makes a change to it, as opposed to just giving the card completely different artwork, it's going to be higher on my list. And it also depends on what was censored. Personally, I think censoring some things is a little bit more ridiculous. So the more ridiculous the censorship, the higher it's probably going to be to me. So let's just start it off here with a quick honorable mention, but I think this is one that a lot of people might know about. It is Nissa Ravain. I think a misconception is that people think that this card actually got censored because of Wizards of the Coast, when in fact it was the video game Duels of the Planeswalker. It was rated T for teen, so it had to be revised for whatever reason. I don't think they had to. It probably would have been perfectly fine, but right around the cleavage area they decided to cover it up because, I guess some teenagers might get a little bit too excited there. But censorship like this has the exact opposite effect, to be honest, because you end up just drawing more attention to what you were outraged about, or what you might perceive other people to be outraged about. It really wasn't a big deal. And further proof that it really wasn't Wizards of the Coast. Innistrad was a later set where they came out with Liliana of the Veil, and they just reprinted the same Liliana of the Veil in Modern Masters 2017, so I don't think they really care about censoring older artwork anymore. I think they're just changing the entire creative direction of their artwork now, as opposed to just censoring things, which I think is much better. The first card that we have here, though, the first card is Crusade. Now, this is only 6 because it's technically not to the degree of censorship that I'm more against. This is completely different artwork. As you can see here, you have like a dragon and you have banners. The original artwork is the literal Crusades, and people were more upset about the use of the cross or just religious symbols in general in Magic the Gathering around the 90s. So you had school teachers, you had pearl clutching grannies in church. I mean, you had a lot of people that were upset about imagery in popular card games, which, to be honest, a lot of the reason why people are just upset about things like that are because of the popularity of the game. If it was a game that hardly anybody's ever heard of, people probably wouldn't be as outraged. Kind of the same deal with Marilyn Manson. If he was a nobody and only lasted for about a year, people wouldn't be as upset about him. But it's the popularity, it's the fear that something could be taking over and gaining popularity over what you think they should be interested in. So again, lower on this list because I don't think it's a direct censorship, but rather we're just going to change the artwork. This happened in 5th edition, and you're probably never going to see the original artwork. Maybe not so much because of the reference to Christianity, but because alpha artwork doesn't really see any reprinting. It's really outdated, and I've seen artwork from Urza's block get reprinted because it's at least somewhat modern. So yeah, I mean, it was a good idea to change it because it was going to get old anyway. And then we have the 5th one, number 5, which is Vampiric Feast. This is a card from Portal, and it's pretty tame. I mean, by today's standards, I don't really think there'd be too many people outraged about this card. As far as horror movies go, anything referencing Nosferatu or old school horror movies is pretty tame. It's not going to involve violence or sexuality to the degree that we would expect horror movies now to. So to see a card like this get censored, it is an older set, and you're going to see a theme of censorship in China. Most cards that have been censored in Magic the Gathering, by the way, have been censored because of the Chinese market and the differences. And while it may not be illegal to show something like death or witchcraft or skeletons, they kind of have their own moral outrage in China and their own superstitions. So it's a different culture. But this is the censored artwork, which I don't think it's much better. I mean, it looks like a mummified person or someone who maybe isn't female or could potentially be sexualized. I don't know. It doesn't look much better to me, but this is kind of the confusing part of censorship, at least to the Western world, how we perceive it. But you're going to see a lot of this from China, just weird censorship decisions, some more obvious than others. This one is a little less obvious why they did it. The next card we have is Diabolic Servitude. I would say they basically just cropped the picture. As you can see, you have this guy here with a controller or whatever he has in his hand, but this is the zoomed up version of the original artwork from Urza's Saga, which has been reprinted with the same exact artwork in newer sets. which is really what it comes down to about Chinese censorship. It's kind of all over the place, especially with these older cards. You don't know if they have something against skeletons or zombies or demons or witchcraft, because they allow certain things and they don't allow others. Or wizards decided to go a certain direction with artwork here and then just completely abandon that same direction in another card. So it's kind of a head scratcher to me. If anybody actually knows why this was censored for the Chinese market, please tell me. I don't believe China has anything to do with these censorship decisions. I think it's mostly wizards being precautious. The next card we have here is Charcoal Diamond. This one is pretty tame. I mean, looking at this card, you'd be, where's the censorship? What did they have to censor? Then I show you the original from 7th edition in the Western world. It's a skeleton hand. That's it. It's a skeleton hand holding a charcoal diamond. Like I said before, the Chinese market, really difficult to gauge what they might be offended by, what they won't be offended by. It seems to me that across the board, the human skeleton is kind of taboo. So you're almost never going to see anything skeletal in Chinese artwork, especially for this card game. They'd rather not offend anybody. They'd rather not offend the people that they have over there. I would compare them to a lot of the people over here in America who have their own superstitions, more religious superstitions than anything. But yeah, it's a superstition about death. It's about death imagery, anything like that. It's really tame artwork either way. So the censorship to me is a little bit more odd, and it's more direct censorship because you're taking the same exact artwork and changing an aspect of it. Kind of like Diabolic Servitude, where you just use the same artwork and you cropped it off. That's censorship to me. This is definitely censorship. And we have number 2, which is really funny and also extremely creepy. Elven Cachet. This is the Portal artwork with Rebecca Gay. If you're not familiar with her, she does a lot of beautiful artwork for this game, and she still does it. Her style has remained incredibly consistent over the years. It's kind of odd, though, why the Chinese market had a problem with this, or why Wizards of the Coast thought that they would have a problem with this in order to censor it. But the decision that they decided to go with was replace this woman who's dressed in sheer clothing, I guess, with a child that is in a creepy pose, sort of bent over behind a tree. Looks very weird. Very creepy. Don't understand the reference here. This is intended for the Chinese market, so I'm gonna just accept the fact that they have a lot of cultural differences and this may not seem as weird over there. But definitely funny to any of us over here in America or just the Western world, because Rebecca Gay's artwork is incredibly tame. Very few instances where her artwork has ever been explicit or suggestive. It's almost always just the artwork and the style itself as opposed to what the depictions are. But again, very hard to gauge what the Chinese market might be offended by, because it seems to be a little bit all over the place. And then we have the number 1 card, at least to me, the number 1 censored Magic the Gathering card. It is Unholy Strength. This is the 4th edition version of Unholy Strength. If you don't know by now, this card has had multiple versions of artwork. I believe 4 or 5 of them. Some are more comical. This one from 7th edition is just downright hilarious. Looks like something from a Disney film. And then you have the newer artwork, which actually looks amazing. It looks like Unholy Strength. But the card here from 4th edition just looks so weird, so out of place. Like, what's wrong with it? It's just this dude who's stretched out. His hands are beyond the card border so you can't see them. What is he doing? Well, the purpose of this artwork was to feature the background. It was a flaming pentagram, original alpha. The line between the fantasy world of Magic the Gathering and the real world wasn't really there in the earlier days of the game until they had to establish it by getting rid of all this stuff. You're gonna have a lot of stuff from Legends as well that kind of blurs the line between the fantasy world they tried to create and then the real world, so I can understand from that perspective. And also, you have children playing your game while you want to censor it. But the decision here to just erase the pentagram in the background, it seems a little bit too silly to me, because what you have left is just a bunch of empty space in the background. It wasn't like it was filled with creativity in the background, but at least you had context to the artwork, like what exactly was going on. It's literally Unholy Strength. And this is, to me, a lot different than just changing the artwork to something like Demonic Tutor, which also has a pentagram. I think there's a pentagram on his chest. They didn't censor this artwork at all. They just changed it later on, because the same thing, they're not going to reprint a lot of alpha artwork anyway, so they changed it to the Liliana version of Demonic Tutor. Still makes sense, but this here is probably the most blatant form of censorship that we've seen in the game, and the most relevant to us over here, us English speakers, or anyone who understands the moral outrage with satanic symbols. But anyway, that's gonna do it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I love going over cards like these. I think it's interesting, especially the Chinese ones. I don't necessarily understand the moral outrage over in China. I'll have to do some more research about it, but I am familiar with their fear of death and skeletal imagery. There is some sort of moral outrage over there. I would say it's comparable to the moral outrage over here with religious symbols. It's just a different culture. That's really what it boils down to. But anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off. See you all next video.